Let me ask you something uncomfortable. When you're stopped at a red light and a brand new truck pulls up next to you, do you ever wonder how the person driving it can actually afford it? Not casually. Not, maybe they're doing fine. I mean mathematically, because that truck probably costs more than your first house, has more screens than a NASA control room, and a monthly payment that would make a mortgage lender gently weep into their calculator. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The person driving it probably doesn't make more money than you. Sometimes less. Sometimes a lot less. So how is this possible? Are millions of Americans secretly rich? Did everyone inherit money at the same time? Or did we collectively agree to suspend basic math? Welcome to the modern car payment trap, a system so perfectly engineered that reasonable people sign contracts they would laugh at in any other context, and they do it with a smile. Now, before we go any further, let's establish something important. This isn't about shaming anyone. If you're watching this thinking, this sounds like me, relax. You didn't fail. You were targeted. Because the auto financing system in the United States is not designed to help you buy transportation. It's designed to make the most expensive decision feel normal, even responsible, even deserved, and that's what makes it dangerous. Now let's start with a number that sounds fake, but unfortunately isn't. The average new car payment in America is now over $700 per month. $700. That's not for a luxury car. That's the average. For trucks and SUVs, which now dominate the market, payments regularly hit $900, $1,000, even $1,200 a month. Every month, for 6, 7, sometimes 8 years. Let's pause for a second. If someone told you they were spending $1,000 a month on groceries, you'd stage an intervention. If they said $1,000 a month on clothes, you'd assume they had a problem. But $1,000 a month on a car? America just nods and says, well, you need reliable transportation. Number, you need transportation, not a second rent payment with cup holders. Now here's where things get interesting. Because wages did not rise like this. Median household income did not triple, but car payments did. Which means something else had to change. And it did. Quietly, gradually, almost invisibly. Loan terms. Remember when car loans were 3 years? Maybe 4 if you were feeling adventurous. Those days are gone. Modern car loans are 6, 7, even 8 years long. Some lenders now offer 10-year car loans. 10 years. That's not a loan. That's a lifestyle commitment. And the reason people accept it is simple. The dealership doesn't sell cars. They sell monthly payments. Nobody asks, how much does this car really cost me over time? They ask, can I make this number work every month? That's the trap. Because when you stretch a $60,000 vehicle over 8 years, the payment looks manageable. Not cheap, but survivable. And survivable feels safe. Until you do the math. Because that manageable payment often adds up to $80,000, $90,000, sometimes more. And by the time you're halfway through the loan, the car is worth far less than what you owe. Welcome to negative equity, the financial equivalent of quicksand. Once you're in it, getting out requires effort, cash, and admitting a mistake. Guess how often people choose that option? Instead, they roll the problem forward. They trade the car in, they add the unpaid balance to the next loan, they upgrade. Now the hole is deeper, but the payment still works. For now. Now let's talk about the magic words dealerships love. 0% financing. Sounds amazing. Free money, right? Except it isn't. Because that 0% is baked into the price. You're either paying more for the car or paying interest. You don't get both the discount and the rate. And most people who qualify for true 0% financing could afford the car anyway. For everyone else, interest quietly compounds in the background, especially on long-term loans. Now add insurance, because insuring a $60,000 truck is not the same as insuring a $15,000 sedan. Full coverage, collision, comprehensive, gap insurance. Suddenly, insurance alone is $200 to $300 a month. Then fuel, then maintenance, then repairs. A modern truck is not a simple machine. When something breaks, it breaks expensively. Brakes, transmissions, electronics. You're not paying $150 anymore. You're paying four figures. So what do people do? They adapt. And by adapt, I mean they restructure their entire financial life around a car. They delay saving. They skip investing. They cut everything else. They eat like college students while driving like executives. Some take second jobs just to pay for the vehicle they use to get to the second job, which is poetic in a sad way. Others dip into retirement accounts, borrow from the future to impress the present. And all of this feels normal. That's the scariest part. The trap isn't obvious. It's socially accepted. It's advertised. It's encouraged. Because the auto industry isn't just selling transportation. It's selling identity. That truck isn't just a truck. It says something about who you are. Strong, successful, reliable. And once identity is involved, logic gets very quiet. But here's the truth. A car is not proof of success. It's a tool. And when a tool consumes your future to decorate your present, it's not helping you. In the next part, we're going to break down exactly how this trap keeps people stuck for decades. How trade-ins, negative equity, and upgrading lock families into permanent payments. And why the people who look the richest are often the most fragile financially. Now let's talk about how this trap actually keeps people stuck. Because the real damage doesn't happen when you buy the first car. It happens when you try to get out. This is where the system shows its teeth. Let's say you've been paying on your car for 3 years. You've done everything right, paid on time, never missed a payment. You feel responsible. Then you check the numbers. You still owe more than the car is worth. That's negative equity. And it's not rare. It's the default. Cars depreciate fast, especially in the first few years. Meanwhile, long-term loans move slowly. The balance barely drops at first. So when life changes, and it always does, you're stuck. New job, new commute, growing family, rising costs. You think, maybe I should trade this in. And this is where the illusion kicks in. The dealer says, no problem, we'll roll the balance into your next car. That sounds helpful, supportive, almost friendly. What it really means is this. You didn't solve the problem, you buried it, and now it's charging interest. This is how people end up financing cars they never truly reset. Loan after loan, payment after payment, sometimes for decades. The car changes, the obligation doesn't. Now let's talk about why people accept this. Because nobody sits down and says, I'd like to make my financial life harder. They say, I just need something reliable. Or, this one has better safety. Or, it's only $80 more a month. Only. Those two words have destroyed more financial futures than bad luck ever did. Because $80 a month isn't $80 a month. It's $80 a month for 84 months. Plus insurance. Plus higher registration. Plus maintenance. That's not $80. That's thousands. But the brain doesn't think in totals. It thinks in monthly pain. And if the pain feels tolerable, logic steps aside. Now let's talk about why this hits Americans especially hard. Because the US is built around driving. Public transport is inconsistent. Cities are spread out. Work, school, groceries, all require a car. So the idea of just buy cheaper feels unrealistic to many people. And dealerships know this. They position expensive vehicles as necessities, not luxuries. Need 4 doors. SUV. Need space. SUV. Need safety. SUV. Need to feel like an adult. SUV. Suddenly, a $45,000 vehicle feels modest, responsible, and a $65,000 one feels like a small upgrade. This is not accidental. Manufacturers make more profit on larger vehicles, so marketing leans hard in that direction, and consumers follow. Now let's talk about credit, because credit turns this whole thing into a psychological maze. A higher credit score doesn't protect you, it enables you. The better your credit, the more absurd the offers become. Longer terms, lower monthly payments, bigger approvals. You're rewarded with the ability to borrow more, not the wisdom to borrow less. And this creates a strange situation. People with excellent credit are often the ones carrying the largest, longest car loans. They're trusted, so they're tempted. Now add inflation to the mix. Cars cost more, repairs cost more, insurance costs more. But wages didn't rise at the same pace. So what's the solution offered? Longer loans. Again, stretch it, smooth it, make it feel affordable. And every stretch increases the chance that life will interrupt before the loan ends, which brings us to repossessions, because this part rarely gets discussed. When people fall behind, it's not because they were reckless, it's because something changed. Job loss, medical bills, family issues. And when a car gets repossessed, you don't just lose the core. You often still owe money. The car is sold at auction, usually for less than you owe. The difference? That's still your problem. So now you're without transportation and still in debt. That's not a setback. That's a financial injury. Now let's talk about the emotional side. Because cars are emotional purchases. They represent freedom, independence, progress. So when the payment becomes stressful, people don't question the car. They question themselves. I should earn more. I need to hustle harder. I just need to get through this year. They don't say, this decision is draining my future. Because that would mean confronting sunk cost. And sunk cost is painful. So instead, people adapt. They normalize stress. They postpone saving. They reduce investing. They borrow from retirement. They turn short-term comfort into long-term sacrifice. And all of it feels rational in the moment. Because the payment still clears. Until it doesn't. Now let's zoom out. Why is this trap so effective? Because it attacks the part of the brain that hates discomfort. Monthly payments feel manageable. Large totals feel abstract. Dealerships, lenders, and advertisers understand this perfectly. They never talk about total cost. They talk about only per month. They don't say 8-year loan. They say low monthly. They don't say depreciation. They say resale value. Words matter. Because words frame decisions. And the frame is always designed to move inventory, not to protect your future. Now here's the most uncomfortable truth of all. A car payment doesn't just cost money. It costs opportunity. Every dollar going into a depreciating asset is a dollar not compounding elsewhere. Not invested, not saved, not working for you. And compound growth doesn't forgive delays. Missed years don't come back. They just disappear quietly. In the next part, we're going to talk about the long-term consequences. How car payments quietly delay wealth by decades. Why people with modest cars often end up far ahead. And how to think about transportation in a way that actually builds financial stability instead of destroying it. Now let's talk about the long-term damage. Not the obvious stuff. Not the monthly stress. Not the awkward conversations with yourself when the payment clears. The invisible damage. The kind that doesn't hurt right away, but quietly reshapes your entire financial future. Because a car payment isn't just a bill. It's a drag coefficient on your life. It slows everything down. Career flexibility, savings, investing, risk-taking, time. Let's start with investing, because this is where the math becomes unforgiving. Take a $700 monthly car payment. Very normal now, almost boring. Now imagine that money invested instead. Nothing exotic, no day trading, no miracle stocks, just a broad market index fund. Historically average returns. Over 30 years, that single payment, invested consistently, doesn't turn into a nice bonus. It turns into hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sometimes more. That's not theory. That's arithmetic. And this is the part people don't emotionally connect to. They don't feel the future loss. They feel the present comfort. So they trade decades of compounding for heated seats and a larger screen. And it feels reasonable. Until you zoom out. Now let's talk about time again. Because car payments don't just take money. They take years. When someone is locked into a 6 or 7 year loan, they make life decisions differently. They don't change jobs easily. They don't take pay cuts for better long-term opportunities. They don't start businesses. They don't go back to school. Because the payment doesn't care about your dreams. It shows up every month. On time. No excuses. And this creates a subtle form of financial gravity. You stay where you are because moving feels risky. And that's how a car quietly influences your entire career path. Now let's talk about stress, because stress compounds just like money does, but in the opposite direction. A large fixed payment narrows your margin. Small surprises feel bigger. Normal setbacks feel threatening. You carry low-level anxiety constantly, and when stress becomes normal, people make worse decisions. They spend impulsively. They avoid looking at numbers. They delay important choices. Not because they're irresponsible, because their nervous system is overloaded, and overload is expensive. Now let's talk about identity, because cars are never just cars. They're symbols. They signal success, adulthood, stability. So when someone struggles with a car payment, they don't say, "This decision was too expensive." They say, "I'm failing." That shame keeps people quiet. They don't ask for advice. They don't admit the pressure. They just push harder. And pushing harder usually means sacrificing the future. More hours, more stress, less margin, all to protect an image. Now here's something uncomfortable. Many people who look financially successful are one missed paycheck away from collapse. Not because they're reckless, but because their fixed costs are enormous. Large house, large car payments, high insurance. Everything looks impressive. Nothing is flexible. And flexibility is what keeps people afloat. Now let's flip the perspective. Think about people who drive modest cars, older cars, paid-off cars, cars with personality, maybe a dent, maybe a sound it shouldn't make. From the outside, they look ordinary. From the inside, they're free. They have cash flow, they have margin, they have options. And over time, that difference becomes dramatic. Because while one person is paying interest, the other is compounding. While one person is maintaining appearances, the other is building security. And this gap grows silently, year after year. Now let's talk about the myth of reliability, because this one keeps people trapped. I need a new car because I can't afford repairs. That sounds logical, until you compare numbers. A $2,000 repair feels painful. But it's not $700 every month for 7 years. It's not increased insurance. It's not depreciation. It's a one-time hit. And most older cars don't break every month. They break occasionally, which is still cheaper than constant payments. But payments feel predictable, and predictability feels safe, even when it's expensive. Now let's talk about dealerships again, because the experience is designed to exhaust you. Long negotiations, endless paperwork, fast talking, friendly pressure. By the time the finance office appears, your brain is tired. You're ready to agree. And that's when add-ons show up. Extended warranties, protection plans, extras you didn't ask for. Each one only a little more per month. By the end, the payment barely resembles the starting point. But you sign anyway, because you just want to leave. This isn't accidental. Fatigue sells. Now let's talk about why this cycle is so hard to break. Because once you've lived with a high payment, downshifting feels like failure. Buying a cheaper car feels like going backwards, even if it makes your life easier. This is called loss aversion. The pain of giving something up feels stronger than the pleasure of gaining freedom. So people upgrade instead of reset. They trade in instead of paying off. They stay trapped. Now here's the key insight. The car payment trap doesn't work because people are bad at math. It works because people are human. They value comfort. They avoid pain. They respond to social cues. The system exploits that relentlessly. In the final part, we're going to talk about how to escape this trap without becoming extreme, miserable, or disconnected from reality. How to think about cars rationally in an irrational system. And how one simple mindset shift can free up more money than most side hustles ever will. At some point, a strange thought shows up. Not dramatic, not emotional, just uncomfortable. You realize the car was never the problem, the payment was. Because the car sits there, quiet, innocent. It doesn't demand anything. The payment does. Every month, on schedule, unimpressed by your mood, your goals, or your plans. And once you see that distinction, everything changes. Because you stop asking, what car do I want? And you start asking a far more dangerous question. What does this payment cost me over time? That's when the spell breaks. Now let's talk about escape. Not dramatic escape, not selling everything and riding a bicycle into the sunset. A realistic escape, one that works in the real world. The first shift is psychological. You stop treating cars as rewards and start treating them as tools. That sounds simple. It's not. Because rewards are emotional, tools are practical. Rewards justify overspending. Tools demand efficiency. Once a car becomes a tool, its job is clear. Get you where you need to go. Safely, reliably, without consuming your future. That's it. Not impress, not signal status, not compensate for stress. Transportation. Now here's the part people don't expect. Driving a less expensive car doesn't feel like deprivation. It feels like relief. Because relief is the absence of pressure. And pressure is what the payment created in the first place. People who escape large car payments describe the same feeling. Breathing room. Options, calm. They don't miss the features. They don't miss the image. They miss nothing. Now let's talk about the most dangerous phrase in personal finance. I can afford the payment. That sentence has ruined more balance sheets than bad luck ever did. Because affordability isn't about the payment, it's about the opportunity cost. What else could this money become? What flexibility could it create? What stress could it remove? Once you ask those questions, many affordable payments stop making sense immediately. Now let's talk about the lie of progress. Because upgrading cars often feels like moving forward. New job, new car, promotion, upgrade, milestone birthday, upgrade. But real progress isn't louder. It's quieter. It looks like fewer obligations, lower fixed costs, more margin, more patience, and patience is incredibly powerful. Because patience lets compound growth do what no hustle ever will. Now let's talk about compounding one last time. Because this is where everything comes together. Money that isn't tied up in payments gets options. It can be invested, saved, used to buy time, time to choose better jobs, time to recover from mistakes, time to say no. Compound growth doesn't require genius. It requires consistency, and consistency requires margin. Car payments destroy margin, quietly, reliably. Now zoom out. Why is this trap so common? Because it's normalized, because everyone around you is doing it, because marketing is loud and constant, because restraint doesn't look impressive, but wealth rarely does. Real wealth whispers. It shows up as flexibility, it shows up as calm, it shows up as not panicking when life does what life always does. Now here's the final truth. You don't need to drive the cheapest car, you don't need to avoid enjoyment, you don't need to live like a monk. You just need to respect math. And math doesn't care how nice the interior feels. It cares about time, interest, opportunity. And once you align with that, money stops being an enemy. It becomes a system. One you can actually win. Now let's bring this home. This channel isn't about shame. It's not about telling you what you should drive. It's about pulling back the curtain on decisions that quietly shape decades. If this video made you rethink a purchase, or question a payment you were told was normal, or finally understand why money always felt tight despite earning more, then do 3 simple things. First, subscribe, not because we promise hacks or hype, but because this is a place for honest conversations about money in a world full of noise. Second, like the video, not for ego, but because it helps this message reach people who need clarity more than another sales pitch. And third, send this video to one person, Someone real, someone you care about, someone who might be driving their future away one monthly payment at a time. Not to judge them, just to share perspective. And finally, leave a thoughtful comment. Not great video. Tell us what hit, what changed the way you think, what decision you're going to pause on before signing anything. Because this wasn't made casually. It was researched, written, rewritten, for people who are smart enough to question normal and brave enough to choose better. Money doesn't have to control you, but you do have to understand the traps. And now, you do.